It's Doctor Who Sunday. That means we take a day off and take a break from the woke news and talk about Doctor Who. We're not talking about the current series in this video. We're going to talk about the Curse of Fenric. Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, switch on the notification bell so that you know I am releasing another video. Thank you to everyone who's joined me already. I cannot run this channel without you. I talk about Doctor Who on Sunday and the woke and crazy stuff during the week. Normally, I would release a new poll on my poll post page. However, I've not released one weekend just gone because I have to work on an issue that I've got. So the polls will be back up on Saturday coming. So please be sure to check out that poll when it goes up on Saturday at 10 a.m. British Standard Time. The Curse of Fenric is a Sylvester McCoy story. It was written by Ian Briggs, it was directed by Nicholas Mallet, and it aired to 4.1 million people on average. So that's all 4 parts put together in one. The Doctor and Ace land in World War II near Maiden's Point. The Doctor goes to meet Judson, who is studying the prisoner's dilemma and is translating old and ancient texts to reveal the curse of Fenric. Judson also has access to a supercomputer, and the base contains nerve gas. They also investigate the catacombs, and the Doctor and Ace find a vase which Judson takes to work on. However, Judson is overpowered by Fenric. Fenric uses the hemovores to kill the people at the base. The idea being that if they have faith, these people, then they wouldn't be taken by the hemovores. The faith is the key to the plot in many respects for this. The Ancient One is resurrected and is supposed to be capturing the Doctor. However, you can build a psychic barrier by having faith in anything. And, well, Fenric was also planning to destroy life on Earth by using the chemicals within it, but this psychic link, this barrier, it all leads to Fenric's downfall in the end. The story oversees one of the biggest companion arcs of that time. It was very rare for companions to have character development, but they decided to develop Ace's character. She meets her grandmother, Kathleen, and baby Audrey, which is her own mother. She ensures that they go to Perivale, thus ensuring her own timeline exists. The Doctor, meanwhile, has set up a chess game for Fenric. Ace, none the wiser, assists Fenric. Fenric threatens to kill Ace if the Doctor did not kneel before him. However, the Doctor chooses not to, and he decides to break Ace's faith in him by saying that she was one of the wolves to begin with. Ace's faith is shattered. The Ancient One seizes Fenric and puts him into the gas chamber. Ace and the Doctor flee the base before it explodes. They leave after her fear of water is dealt with. I know that for a lot of people, this is a favourite story. I must say for me personally, it is not a favourite story, and there are reasons for that, and it's mostly surrounding the writing. I'll get into that a bit later. There's lots of good points about this story as well. One of the highlights is Sylvester McCoy. I know some people find this performance a bit trying at times, especially with this particular story, and he's not everyone's cup of tea, I guess you could say. Epic Fantasy RPG official says, excellent story, spoiled as usual by Sylvester McCoy, by far the worst choice for the Doctor Who until the 2010s. So Epic Fantasy isn't a big fan of the Sylvester McCoy Doctor, but I feel by this point he's really established what he wants to do with the Doctor. He's got away from this jokey, almost juvenile and childish Doctor that we had at the beginning when he first took over from Colin Baker, unceremoniously fired Colin Baker. Now we get a much darker and a much more sinister version of his Doctor. He does a much more warped and perhaps even sometimes more scary of a Doctor as well. It wasn't particularly common to have a scary doctor, but there were things that he did in this that made him, well, dark and untrustworthy. And it's in the script as well. And in many respects, I suppose that would probably make the children lose faith in him too. It's also something that they took forward with the Big Finish stories. I believe it was the Fearmonger from the top of my head, where they worked on destroying Ace's faith within the Doctor again. Well, this story comes before the Fearmonger, and that part was at the end where he was purposely breaking down her trust. It's probably one of the best bits I've seen him do in the entire story. He breaks down her trust so that the giant servant, or the ancient one, would take Fenric and destroy them both. You can see the dark and sinister patterns throughout that's going on behind Sylvester's eyes. One of the things that I like about Sylvester in the audio drama is that you can hear his inner monologue going on in his brain, whereas you can just see it on his face here. I prefer Sylvester in the Big Finish audio dramas, I must say. And Ace's devastation, how Sophie Aldred played that was absolutely wonderful. You can tell, and having met them in real life as well, you can see that they get on really well. And I would say particularly then they also did as well. And I think it played across onto the screen. So for Sophie, it was almost like a friend that was destroying her trust. She put it across into the performance very well. Sylvester's Doctor, like any other Doctor, is played with absolute and utmost intelligence. What adds to this Doctor is that in this case, he lands with the knowledge of what's going on. This is something that is also carried forward into the audio plays too. The Doctor knows that he's going to land near Maiden's Point. He knows what he is there for. He knows he is there because of the curse of Fenric. He doesn't tell Ace any of this, and she wasn't too pleased when she finds out. How he gets himself involved in that situation is a really good sign of some very good creative writing. That's the thing about not having a sonic screwdriver anymore. It allows the freedom for you to write freely. In this case, he lands at the base and he immediately pulls a very quick one using authority against the Marines so that he can go in and visit Dr. Judson. There's no flouncing and bouncing. There's no zapping of the sonic screwdriver or whipping out the psychic paper. It's just asserting authority in his voice, which he delivers with absolute relish, and it gets him what he wants. And he also, which I think is quite funny, this bit, uses a typewriter to type a letter on the headed paper to say that it's from the War Office, to say that he has been passed to go and visit Dr. Judson, asserting his authority, a bit like something the Pat Charlton Doctor would have done in the War Games. Such a clever little bit of writing, I would say. There's plenty of other clever little bits as well with the writing. With the Doctor, for example, he's speaking Russian. That's not something I would have ever expected to ever hear from the Doctor, because obviously we believe that the TARDIS translates to English, right? Well, from that, we assume that's what it just does all the time. We hear everything in English anyway. Is that not funny? Does it ever make you wonder if the Doctor really, truly, and honestly is always speaking another language, but we only ever hear it in English? And now, speaking of languages, they did singing to get rid of the herbivores. I thought that was a bit of a bizarre choice. I don't know if it was the best choice. Not that there's anything wrong with Sylvester's singing. I was just not expecting it, but I suppose when you can't use a sonic screwdriver, you do have to think of something else. They also dedicate a good amount of time on the siege on the church. Now, here's the thing about this. I thought this would have been made a bigger deal of. Ace hints at the fact that the church looks more like a castle and the fact that it was set for a battleground. I remember when I was first watching The Curse of Fenric that I thought, because of the implications behind that, and what she was saying, that there was going to be a massive battle on the church grounds, but we didn't get it, so I was a little disappointed. There was a siege on the church, which I really did like. It was a very long sequence and it made sense within the story, and I think this gives it some proper, well, it gives the companions actually some proper stunt work to do. Ace climbs down the side of the church on a very thin rope ladder. Very thin. So, one of the biggest things in this story is faith. And you need faith to defeat the Hemivores. How does everyone feel about that? It's a very unusual move within Doctor Who. I think that's because Doctor Who is sci-fi based TV show with history, and normally the resolution was to never believe in something and have faith in something. That's normally some kind of scientific root at the end of it in Doctor Who. At least I think there's always been that. Now, staying on this topic, I'm not sure how I feel about this one, but the vicar not having faith in Christianity because he didn't have faith in his Bible or God. He therefore succumbed to the Hemivores. We quite often criticize New Who for things like that. So, how does everyone feel about that? It's almost implying that faith isn't real. I know there are clergymen out there that do question their faith, though. So, maybe it was just a representation of that. The Hemivores are an interesting addition. I tell you what they made me think of to begin with, and that's not necessarily vampires, although I would say vampires is probably much more of an apt description, but they made me think of sirens. I thought when I first watched it that's exactly what they were going to be, and they were going to be sirens, but I think they're more of a cross between a siren and a vampire, and I wish that they were more like a siren, to be honest with you, than a vampire. I like the strong mist coming over the sea and taking the two girls, and then they reappear, and the first thing that they do is lure a soldier into the water. But I think my favourite shot of the water stuff was definitely the body, and the when the body underwater wakes up. That's creepy as anything. And then all of the dead Hemivores coming out of the water, and they were encrusted with all these types of like mollusks and things like that. It was really, really good stuff, and I really wish that they had played on that a lot more than what they did. I do wish that they had made those two girls much more creepy rather than just pale and ghost like. Their performances are okay. I don't know if they were on a bit of a time crunch, but I feel like they could have added more to the characters. It's either the writing or maybe they just didn't have enough time to work on character development and direction. It was just not up to par. Now, when I write my notes for these stories, I have a good section, I have a bad section, and I have a section in the middle. And in the good section, I've written biodegradable girls, and it took me a while to decipher what I meant by that. And I think what I meant was I really like the special effects of the characters' decomposition. The fighting may not have been brilliant for these two characters of the two girls, but I think that was probably their best bit when they decomposed on the ground. I must say, though, full credit to everyone filming this story. They had to film in all that rain and in the water. That's not a comfortable thing to do because when you are doing something like this, there's water involved and you're wet. You are spending hours upon end being soaking wet. It's not the easiest thing to do. And if you're stopping and changing angles in whatever you're doing for this particular story on the set, then makeup then have to come in and soak you all again and make you look like you're still soaking wet instead of drying out. Full credit to the cast. That is not an easy thing to cope with. I also really like the makeup for the giant serpent, or the ancient one as he is known. I don't think they necessarily dedicated a lot of time per se to the costumes of the actors. Well, the characters who were not dead, they dedicated more time to the costuming of the actors who were playing the Hemovores and the Ancient One. That being said, I do like the fact that it is a historical setting, so they were able to match, from my mind, what World War II would have looked like in dress sense wise, and even with what Ace was wearing. Naturally, of course, the only one that sticks out like a sore thumb is the Doctor, because he never really changes his costume at all. They have some really good special effects as well for this. Oh, by the way, what I just said about the Doctor, I prefer it when he doesn't change his costume. Anyway, back to the special effects. Like the Ultimate Machine. I like that. And everything that goes wrong with the Ultimate Machine. From its electrocuting of the people, the yellow eyes, and Dr. Judson. I like the mystery that has to be unraveled in this when they arrive. It is very much what on earth is going on? What has happened to these soldiers? What is hunting them? And of course, we discovered it's a curse, the curse of Fenric. Now, Doctor Who doesn't always dabble in curses and things like that, but I think with the Sylvester McCoy era they did do things like that and bend towards the more supernatural and maybe sometimes mythological, a bit like what we're seeing now, but better. The fact that the Doctor seems to know exactly what is going on here, and naturally, of course, Ace felt very betrayed, is saying something, really. The Doctor knows the inscription and that it's a machine, and he knows he's got a game to continue with Fenric, which results in him setting up a chess game and getting Fenric to try and solve it. And if he won, he would have then defeated the Doctor. And of course, Ace naturally bugs it up by telling Fenric that the black and white pawns should be used to fight together. Now let's discuss Ace, because with Ace, this story is, well, it's a very big deal. Now, I had to look this up before I was sure that this was the one that was supposed to have gone before Ghostlight, and I had to double check that I was correct. Ghostlight should have come after this story, because she mentions a house in this one. And that is the house that they go to in Ghostlight. In many respects, it doesn't affect the continuity all that much, because you could just look at it and think she's mentioning this because she's already experienced what she experienced in Ghostlight. So she felt like it related to the situation that is going on. So yeah, I just brought that up briefly. It's interlinked. It doesn't matter, I think, because they swapped it over. It really doesn't. However, her story arc is the precursor of what we get today with the companions. This was something that they were very clearly looking at doing with the companions going forward. So they were testing the water with Ace. Now, naturally, this could be an extremely companion centric story. Anything that has the companion arc does run the risk of being companion centric, but they don't do it. It's Ghostlight that's more companion centric. And I really do think and believe that it is a very good thing that they do not go there. And they don't go into too much depth or detail. So, for example, they could have done the whole implosion of when Ace holds that baby Audrey, who is a mother, and that's a whole entire timeline, and it becomes absolutely messed up, much like what we see with Father's Day. Ace could have found out much earlier on that Kathleen was her grandmother, and you could have had all of these soapy elements that the story really does not need. They avoided it. I think that in today's show, RTD took it too far. But I don't think it was a bad idea that they tested that out with Ace. I do like the shock and devastation that Sophie plays when she finds out that baby Audrey is her mother, and it makes you wonder, does the Doctor also know about this too? Judging by his reaction, you would say that he probably doesn't know, but you never know with this Doctor. Other than ensuring her own timeline, the impact of Ace's story does not have a massive one on Doctor Who. It really could have, because there were so many things that could have been soapy, and there were a few soapy moments, and I don't really like going there soapy wise with Doctor Who. And it was unusual to have that element back then. I guess you could say that Ace's entire story arc was the soap element to it. I guess they were trying to prove what else you could do with the companion other than ask questions and be captured. It may have also been a very common complaint for the companions to mention upon leaving the show. Now, I think we'll talk about a couple of downers. I think Anne Reid was very underused in this, and she's got quite a massive caliber. Anne Reid has. She has a very distinctive delivery in her style, and her voice is very distinctive too. And I just felt like they could have done more with her. Maybe she could have been more evil, although I suppose when she does come back for new Doctor Who, she's evil in that one, isn't she? So they did her a little bit better on her return. So I guess it makes up for it. I also think there's not much development between Ace and her friends, and I think her friends really don't have much character development overall altogether. Chiggy118 says, decent story led down by some very poor vampire acting by the two girls and needed more night scenes, though to be fair, that's a budget constraint. And I would agree with that, although I don't say an actor is bad. I do think that they needed to work on development, be it in the writing or the portrayal or the direction. I also don't like the fact that the Doctor always seems to lose Ace. I don't know why I have this as a downer, but it just really grated on me. I think possibly it may have had something to do with the writing. In the story, you have a pretty clear-cut arc. We have a clear point, and you know what the Doctor is there to do, and that's to unravel the mystery of the curse in order to save the Earth from this gas. However, sometimes the story does have a tendency to be what I would consider very clunky. There were times when the story naturally progresses, but then there are times where the story just suddenly seems to change and it doesn't seem to be a natural transition between the scenes. So, what I mean by that is you could see that Ace was somewhere that could be a fair bit away from the Doctor. For example, say down at Maiden's Point, and the Doctor is at the church, that scene. And you see Ace leave Maiden's Point. It is implied that it's a little bit away from where they are, but suddenly she's at the church very quickly, and vice versa. So there doesn't seem to be a point where the characters break away from what they're doing entirely to make their way to the next point with a decent amount of time. Do you understand what I mean? The script is a bit clunky, and there are not many transitions between the scenes that ties them together particularly well. It's not all of the story, it's just part of it. That is really the only major downer I have, but it does bring the story down a major peg for me, unfortunately. The ideas and the concepts behind it, they're all there. The flow of the script just needed a lot of improvement. Having said that, the cliffhangers were really good, actually. For example, the Doctor and Ace find themselves surrounded on the beach when they find something in the soldier's hand. The machine goes berserk and they cannot stop it as well. But I think my favourite cliffhanger was when Fenric takes over the body of Dr. Judson and he stands up and he says, "We play the contest again, Time Lord." The colour of his eyes and the deadpan of his delivery was fantastic. There were no facial expressions. He didn't need to do a facial expression. The turn of his voice and his eye colour did everything, and it needed absolutely nothing else. It was quite a terrifying cliffhanger, and it makes you think, what on earth are they going to be playing? Now, I don't have to wait to find out, but those who were around at that time certainly would have had to have waited. And, well, of course, it was a game of chess. How did you feel about that reveal if you were around at that time? I can just imagine you all being on the edge of your seats and they go, "Oh, it's a game of chess." I just imagine that. Keith Solly says, an excellent serial, although some of the plot looks like a rip-off of the early 80s horror film The Fog. Overall, I think The Curse of Fenric is a very chilling mythological tale that dives into its territory of Doctor Who, though it was never really explored until the Sylvester McCoy era. And whilst it's not my favourite, I can appreciate and understand why people really do enjoy this story. It's got everything there. It's got the monsters, it's got the science fiction, it's got the scare factor, it's got the whodunit, it's got the history. It has a little bit of everything that everybody has been able to associate with Doctor Who over the years for a long period of time. And Sylvester gives one of his better performances as the Doctor in this story. Let me know what you think about it. Chat about it, don't shout about it. Like, share, subscribe to the channel, switch on the notification bells so that you know I am releasing another video. Thank you to everyone who watched this video today. I shall see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Bye bye.